the religious factors have been vitally dominant. Eastern man has built his entire way of life upon a compliance with a pattern of universal principles. He has always regarded heaven as first. He has always been ready to sacrifice earth for heaven. He has always been ready to sacrifice wealth for interior contemplation. He has been quick to renounce this world for the other. He has never felt the pressing need to compromise his spiritual principles for the advancement of his industrial or political states. Now, of course, this has its drawbacks. As a result of this attitude, Asia was for centuries very tardy in its industrialism. It also suffered an almost unbroken sequence of bad government. It lacked much of the improvement, much of the scientific knowledge, medical knowledge, professional knowledge that we possess in our Western life. Having placed value where it believed value to belong, it willingly sacrificed for value. In our Western experience, value is now held largely in terms of objective success. Value means the security not of the soul, but of worldly adjustment. It means not that man becomes better, but that he becomes stronger. Not that he becomes necessarily wiser, but that he becomes more skillful. These differences affect our religious patterns. Western man is not conditioned for asceticism. He is not conditioned to take on, without modification, a way of life that has belonged to another people for thousands of years. We see an equally unfortunate situation when Eastern man suddenly tries to become Westernized. The result is a very unhappy and sometimes almost ridiculous situation. Eastern man has not the background to take on the perspectives and objectives of the West without at least a few generations of conditioning. Thus, in the East, Western practices and policies have led to great stress and to the disruption of the cultural life of the people. Our primary concern, then, is that the West is in need of a greater spiritual integrity. We need values. We see in the East certain monuments of these values. And let us again be quite fair about this. The term East is not synonymous with spirit, nor is it necessarily synonymous with value. When we speak of the East, we do not speak of a hemisphere populated with saints. We do not speak of a people faultless and utterly dedicated to their spiritual objectives. We speak rather of a polyglot, a people, many of them, not well oriented in their own beliefs, not free from selfishness or greed, not able to achieve world peace any more than we have in the West. Therefore, when we mean East, we mean rather the basic principles of Eastern philosophy, even as when we speak constructively of Christianity, we certainly do not speak of the clashing of 500 creeds. We speak rather of basic principles as taught by the Holy Nazarene along the shores of the Lake of Galilee. We speak of essentials. Now, the essentials of the East have given us the basis of the yogic doctrine and several other important Oriental schools. These values, I think, are somewhat more appreciated and more guarded and more respected in the East than parallel values of similar significance are respected in the West. But this is by degree only. It is not a clean-cut difference. It is not a difference of where one is all right and the other is all wrong. Thus, the Oriental philosophy with which we are most concerned may be almost as strange to many Easterners as it is to us. I remember speaking on the problem of Oriental philosophy in the Albert Theatre, Calcutta. And after the talk, several Hindus told me that they had no idea that these principles were in their own philosophy. Thus, we cannot be too sure of these things. Mahatma Gandhi had the same experience. He did not realize or understand the wealth of his own cultural background until it was brought directly to his attention by English students in London. Thus, it isn't fair for us merely to assume that we must now acknowledge eternal gratitude to the East any more than we should neglect the West. The principle involved is one of earnest searching, a definite effort to discover what is valuable, and gradually to eliminate the concept of hemispheric difference as we now think of it today. We now think of Eastern wisdom and Western wisdom. Sometime we hope that we will think of the world's wisdom, the wisdom of all good persons, all dedicated human beings seeking better ways of life. The Western way, as we know it, centers around certain experiences. And one of these experiences is our own peculiar scatteredness. The average Western person is not self-disciplined. He is not able to control his own moods, even in lesser things, in the ordinary experiences of life. Probably the most controlled person in the Western Hemisphere is the American Indian, who, however, we scarcely regard today as a proper source of spiritual instruction, although I'm inclined to think we're making a mistake. This point, however, is true, that we as a people are not self-disciplined. We are moved constantly by impulse. We know not the source of this impulse, nor the direction in which it is impelling us. We live a kind of day-to-day life, hoping to get by, and hoping that we will have the skill tomorrow to mend the errors of today. Instead of mending, however, this habit of disorganization generally results in the complete collapse of the fabric of our purposes. As a result of that, Western man does not have directives. He does not like to accept the directives of others. They seem to over-influence his individuality. Yet he exercises very little self-directive. Therefore, we have thought of this book of self-unfoldment in terms of an introduction to self-directiveness, the means by which we will gradually and naturally come to a stronger power to direct and control ourselves. To do this, we must practice certain world-established policies of discipline. Discipline is not an Eastern word, essentially. It is as commonly found among the Greeks. It is simply a term to indicate that the individual has taken hold of his own life, that he is not permitting the various instincts which constitute his personality to have sovereignty over the total pattern of his life purpose. He is learning, or must learn through discipline, that it is not necessary to have a bad disposition, that it is not necessary to be jealous. It is not necessary to hate people. It is not necessary to be selfish or self-centered or arrogant. It is not necessary to be afraid, nor to be a worrier, nor to be a gossip. These excesses which sort of sweep over us and take control of us, so that St. Paul says, when we would do good, evil is ever nigh unto us. This situation is not necessary. It is foolish and unreasonable to assume that man, the noblest creature that we know, has no way in which to polarize his own nobility, that he has been given faculties and powers beyond those of any other creature visible to us in nature. These faculties and powers are not only sufficient to enable him to exist. They are sufficient to enable him to live